The millionaire's son lived hidden until the maid uncovered the secret room. That night, Lancaster Estate was wrapped in a strange stillness, an eerie kind of quiet that didn't feel like peace, but more like the house itself was holding its breath to hide something darker. The dim yellow sconces along the hallway cast long, distorted shadows across the polished marble floor, as if the walls themselves were listening, alert to even the slightest movement. Amelia Brooks, the live-in house caretaker who had moved in just over a month ago, walked softly through the hallway that seemed to sigh under the weight of the night. She was on her way to check the kitchen door before going to bed when a faint sound drifted from the upper floor, a whisper so soft it nearly fused with the house's breathing. At first, Amelia thought she imagined it, but then it came again, clearer, closer, this time unmistakably coming from baby Leo's room. Her heart jolted. She stopped, tilting her head toward the stairs, straining to hear. A woman's voice, gentle, soft, but carrying something off beneath the surface, a forced tenderness. She took a step forward, her bare feet touching the cool marble, pulse pounding against her ribs. Then the voice rose again, clearer this time, chilling enough to freeze her mid-step. "There you go, little one. Everything is almost perfect now." A cold shiver climbed up her spine. It was the voice of Evelyn Lancaster, the baby's mother, the woman who always appeared flawless on camera, always smiling beautifully for her millions of followers online. But behind those perfect reels and spotless morning routines, Amelia had heard whispers among the staff. Evelyn despised noise. She despised disorder. She despised anything that threatened the carefully curated image she built online. Leo's crying, his restless nights, his unpredictable needs, none of it fit the flawless life she sold to millions. But tonight, no cameras were rolling. And the whisper Amelia just heard, it didn't sound like a mother soothing her child. A faint draft slipped through the tall window at the end of the hallway, making the wall lamps tremble. Amelia climbed one step, then froze when she heard another sound, the soft pop of a cap being opened, the faint clink of glass touching glass, so subtle it would be missed if she weren't listening so hard. She whispered to herself, so quietly she barely heard it. "Oh my God, what are they doing to that baby?" The words left her lips like an unintended curse. They weren't loud, they weren't dramatic, but in that suffocating hallway, they sliced through the silence like a needle, puncturing a heavy fog. Her fingers turned cold. Old memories, labs, test tubes, hours spent analyzing samples, flickered through her mind. The instincts she thought she had buried with her former career awakened abruptly, warning her that something unnatural was happening behind that nursery door. Amelia stood frozen on the first step of the staircase, as if her feet were held in place by the very darkness drifting slowly along the hallway. Every sound in the house faded away, leaving only the uneven thud of her heartbeat echoing inside her chest. That whisper, the soft breath of a sentence, still circled in her mind, refusing to leave. It wasn't a lullaby, nor was it affection. It felt like a distorted promise. A cold draft brushed through the distant window again, and the wall lamps trembled as though the house itself had lost its composure. Amelia tightened her grip on the wooden railing, feeling the icy surface steady her senses. She strained to listen, hoping she had mistaken everything, that it had simply been a trick of a too-quiet night. But then another sound came, small yet sharp as a needle, the faint clink of glass. This time she knew she wasn't imagining it. In the shadows upstairs, behind the door where Leo slept, something was happening. Truly happening. Amelia drew in a slow breath. In that moment, memories she had tried to bury, long nights in the lab, abnormal samples, subtle signs others overlooked, rose with startling clarity. Her old instincts pushed at her. Something is wrong. Very wrong. She lifted her foot, stepping up just half a stride before stopping again. not because she feared Evelyn would notice, but because a cold sensation crawled down her spine, telling her she stood at the edge of a dark truth, a truth that, once seen, she would never be able to walk away from again. That feeling still clung to Amelia's skin as she stood frozen on the stair, as though the darkness was waiting for her to take one more step so it could swallow her whole. And just as she struggled to decide what to do, a tiny sound, small but sharp enough to jolt her entire body, rose from the floor above, a weak, strangled breath that barely resembled a cry. It was Leo. Amelia lifted her head, every muscle tightening with instinct. That wasn't a normal baby's cry. It was fragile, broken, like breath being squeezed out of a small chest. She climbed one step, then another. The silence inside Lancaster Estate grew thicker with every movement, pressing down on her like a weight that wanted to drown her in unease. The nursery door was left open just a crack, enough for a thin strip of bluish light from the night lamp to escape. That pale light spilled across the floor like a cold path, drawing Amelia toward it with an invisible pull. She approached slowly, her heartbeat pounding harder, her body already sensing that something terrible awaited on the other side. She reached the door. She didn't touch the handle. She simply leaned ever so slightly to look inside. Evelyn Lancaster stood with her back to the doorway, her slender figure cast in the blue glow, making her look like a statue drained of breath. On the table beside the crib sat an open baby bottle and a tiny glass vial, so small that anyone could overlook it if they weren't paying attention. Evelyn's hand moved slowly, stirring something inside the bottle with a cold, deliberate rhythm. Leo lay in the crib, his tiny hands trembling, his breath shallow and rapid as if he was fighting for every molecule of air. His lips were pale, nearly devoid of color. A chill sliced down Amelia's spine. She realized she was witnessing the continuation of what she had heard earlier. No doubts, no misinterpretations. This was real, terrifyingly real. Evelyn suddenly paused. She tilted her head, not enough to reveal her face, but enough to suggest she was listening. Amelia instantly held her breath. For a brief moment, she felt as though Evelyn could hear her heartbeat from the doorway. Then Evelyn turned back to the crib and whispered, her voice coated in an artificial sweetness. "You have to behave, so everything can go smoothly. You have no idea how hard this is on me." The tone made Amelia's stomach twist. There was no warmth in it, no thread of maternal love, only exhaustion, irritation, and a thin layer of poison disguised as gentleness. Unable to stand it any longer, Amelia stepped back, her heart pounding so violently she feared the sound would betray her. She descended the stairs, her breath short and shaky as if she'd sprinted through darkness. In that moment, she knew she had crossed a boundary. From this second onward, she was no longer a bystander. She had seen, she had understood, and she could no longer pretend she didn't know. With every step away from the hallway, it felt as though she was falling into a void filled with questions. But one question echoed louder than all the rest. How much longer could Leo survive? Amelia's breathing was still uneven as she walked back down the hallway toward her room. The dim yellow light at the far end cast a washed-out streak across the wooden floor, making her shadow look as if it trembled with her inner turmoil. Each step was so soft it barely made a sound, yet to her, every footfall felt as heavy as the weight of what she had just witnessed. She closed her door quietly, leaning her back against the cold wood, feeling its chill seep into her skin. Leo's frail breathing still echoed in her mind, a sound she had heard far too often during her first month at Lancaster Estate. He slept too much, slipping into unnaturally deep slumber as though his tiny body was always drained. When he woke, his eyes were shadowed with dark rings, his eyelids heavy as if from chronic exhaustion. His cry was so faint it barely broke the air. His breaths came fast, shallow, sometimes trembling like he was searching for oxygen in a room too big for him. Amelia had asked Sophie, the young nanny who spent most of the day caring for Leo, about it. But every time she did, Evelyn appeared at the perfect moment, stepping in with a smile thin as a blade. "He's naturally weak, sensitive to new environments. It's normal." Her voice was even and sweet, but there was something beneath it that silenced everyone instantly. No one argued, no one dared. But Amelia was different. She watched. She listened. She remembered every detail. Small things, repeated things, enough to form a picture she didn't want to believe. Now, in the dim room, lit only by her bedside lamp, too many of those pieces were falling exactly into place. The image of Evelyn standing over the crib, the open bottle, the tiny glass vial half hidden in that blue glow. It all confirmed the suspicions Amelia had tried so hard to dismiss. A faint sound outside her door jolted her. Footsteps, slow, short, unmistakable. The shadow of someone paused directly in front of her door. The light beneath the door dimmed. No voice, no knock, only silence, watching. Amelia's heart pounded so violently she feared it would betray her. Then the shadow moved away. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly to keep them from shaking. After a moment, she opened the drawer of her nightstand and took out a small black notebook, the companion she had carried since her days as a lab technician. Opening a fresh page, she wrote quickly, but with sharp, precise strokes. "Leo, signs of exhaustion, sleeps excessively, weak cry, dark circles, rapid breathing. Evelyn dismisses everything, controls all responses." The pen pressed hard into the paper. Amelia set it down and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, fear remained, but something else rose behind it. A resolve, a small, fierce flame born from the very darkness that suffocated this house. If no one dared speak, she would. If no one looked, she would see. And if no one saved Leo, then she would. Morning arrived too quickly, as if the night before had been nothing more than a long blink. Amelia stepped out of her room with tension still clinging to her skin. Lancaster Estate remained elegant and still, but beneath that polish she felt something shifting, quiet, but far from harmless. When she reached the upstairs landing, she found Sophie holding Leo in her arms. The young woman's face looked drained, and the baby lay limp against her shoulder, barely moving. Evelyn had prepared the bottle earlier, as she always did, and left it on the small table beside the crib. Sophie had tried to feed Leo, but he had turned away, refusing more than a few weak sips. "Are you okay?" Amelia asked gently. Sophie shook her head. Her voice was barely audible. "He won't drink again, and the milk smells weird. Like metal, something like that." A cold tremor ran down Amelia's spine. She picked up the bottle from the table and lifted it to her nose. One small inhale was enough. A faint metallic tang, a slight bitterness, and a cloudy texture that shouldn't be there. Leo stirred weakly in Sophie's arms, pale lips, shallow breaths, eyes half open with dark rings that seemed deeper than yesterday. Amelia felt her pulse tighten when that familiar instinct rose, one she had tried for years to bury, along with the career she lost. "Let me hold on to this for a bit," she said. Sophie didn't question, just nodded. The moment Amelia's fingers wrapped around the bottle, memories surged. Unusual samples on her desk, results she suspected had been tampered with. Infants who slept too long, breathed too fast, turned pale too easily. And she remembered the day her world collapsed, accused of falsifying test results she never touched. The helplessness, the injustice. It all returned like an old wave crashing into her chest. Except this time, the stakes were higher. This time, a child's life hung in the balance. Amelia set the bottle down and scanned the room. Something was off about the arrangement of items. A picture frame sat slightly out of place. She reached out to adjust it, and the moment it shifted, she saw it, a small glass vial shoved behind it. She picked it up. No label, no instructions, just a thin layer of powdery white residue at the bottom, a type of substance she had seen in too many cases of slow, prolonged poisoning. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Leo wasn't naturally weak or sensitive or fragile. Something was being done to him, a cause carefully hidden behind sugary explanations and practiced smiles. Amelia drew a deep breath, steadying the tremor at her fingertips. Something sharp and urgent tightened around her chest, a clarity that left no room for hesitation. If she stepped back now, he wouldn't make it. If she stayed silent, the truth would be buried with him. And she understood, with painful certainty, that this moment was the dividing line. She either moved forward or lost everything. Again. Amelia stood still for a few more seconds, fingers wrapped tightly around the glass vial as if every answer she needed lay inside it. Then she set it back exactly where it had been, covering it carefully, because she knew one thing. Evelyn must never suspect that someone had touched her secret. A door opened at the end of the hall, making Amelia flinch. Evelyn stepped out of her room, hair perfectly set, her face composed like something polished to hide every trace of real emotion. She walked with the ease and assurance of someone convinced the entire house existed solely for her. "Where's Leo?" Evelyn asked, her tone flat, not worried, not gentle, just checking the location of an object she owned. "In Sophie's arms," Amelia replied, keeping her voice neutral. Evelyn rolled her eyes, something she did every time Leo's faint cries echoed through the hall. "If he starts fussing again, bring him to me. I can't stand that sound." She pressed a hand to her temple. "He wears me out." Each word fell cold and hollow. Nathaniel Lancaster, her husband, had been gone for 3 days on back-to-back meetings. He always called to check on his son, and Evelyn always answered calmly, "Don't worry, I've got it." And Nathaniel believed her immediately. His trust in her was nearly absolute. He never noticed how weak Leo looked on camera. Light, angles, and Evelyn's careful hands hid everything that needed hiding. But without Nathaniel at home, Amelia had seen Evelyn shift into someone entirely different, sharper, more impatient. She looked at Leo like he was an inconvenience. And the strangest part, she insisted on preparing every bottle herself, never allowing anyone to help. Whenever Sophie offered, Evelyn would give that thin paper-like smile and say, "No need, I'm faster." No one dared push further. When Evelyn disappeared down the stairs, Sophie finally exhaled, holding Leo a little tighter, as though she feared he might slip away. Amelia moved closer. "Are you all right?" "No," Sophie whispered, voice trembling. "I don't want to accuse anyone, but Leo seems weaker every day, like it's not just an ordinary sickness." Her eyes were filled with fear, as if speaking those words alone was dangerous. Amelia looked at Leo's pale lips, the strained rise and fall of his chest, then at Sophie's frightened expression. The urgency inside Amelia surged again, sharp and relentless. She knew they were running out of time, and for the first time, she realized she wasn't the only one who sensed something terrible was happening inside this house. After that morning, Amelia knew she could no longer just stand by. Every instinct in her, from the trained reflexes of someone who once lived inside a lab, to the cold dread tightening in her chest every time Leo struggled to breathe, pushed her to start gathering everything she could. She couldn't accuse anyone without proof, but she also couldn't let this nightmare keep repeating itself. That night, when the hallways dimmed and the staff shut themselves in their rooms, Amelia opened her small notebook and began writing. 8:15 in the evening. Difficulty feeding, pale lips. Milk slightly cloudy. 18 minutes to 10 in the evening, rapid breathing, faint wheeze. 20 minutes past 10 in the evening, dark circles deepening. Note: Evelyn insists on making bottles alone. Each line felt like a blade carving deeper into the truth she was being forced to face. No matter how calm she tried to stay, she could feel the pressure inside the house thickening day by day, as if the walls themselves were swelling with something that would eventually explode. And Evelyn grew more unpredictable. She began appearing around corners exactly when Amelia passed by. Whenever Amelia held Leo, Evelyn's gaze lingered on her hands too long, too deliberately. She didn't ask direct questions, but her scrutiny peeled through Amelia's thoughts like fingers searching for evidence. One afternoon, as Amelia set Leo gently back into his crib, Evelyn stepped behind her and spoke in a low, razor-thin voice. "You seem very invested in Leo's well-being, Amelia." The words weren't mocking, and they weren't quite threatening. They felt like a test, a key turning to see if a lock would give way. Amelia turned, keeping her expression composed, almost cool. "It's my job. I just want to make sure he's all right." Evelyn smiled, a smooth, perfect smile that never reached her eyes. "Good. Just stay within your responsibilities." Then she walked away, leaving behind a silence so heavy even the air felt aware that something dangerous had been hidden inside her words. Later that night, while sorting supplies in the downstairs storage room, Amelia opened a cardboard box that had been shoved against the wall. Inside, beneath scraps of paper and old towels, lay exactly what she feared: a collection of small, empty glass vials, identical to the one she found behind the picture frame. Some still held dried white residue. Others were clean, but the rim carried the faint chemical scent she recognized instantly. Her heartbeat kicked hard, like she had just uncovered the missing piece she never wanted to find. She took the small phone from her pocket and photographed everything. Every vial, every trace, every detail. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes didn't. They were sharp now, focused, stripped of hesitation. The house felt even quieter, almost watchful, as if it too wanted to know what she would do next. She understood that Evelyn was watching just as closely, but Amelia had crossed a line she couldn't step back over. And now she wasn't just observing, she was investigating. That night, rain hammered down on Lancaster Estate as if the sky were emptying everything it had held back for days. Wind slammed against the windows, making the long curtains whip softly against the walls. The whole house trembled under the storm, yet its silence made the rain even more menacing, like a warning everyone was trying to ignore. Amelia was writing in her notebook when she heard it, a faint whisper drifting from upstairs, thin as breath, but sharp enough to stop her heart for a beat. She rose instantly, pulse quickening with every gust of wind sliding through the cracks. It was Evelyn's voice. Amelia climbed the staircase slowly, each wooden step creaking under her weight. As she approached Leo's room, the whispers grew clearer, calm, measured, almost rehearsed. Just a little more, and everything will be perfect. The words froze something inside her. They held no warmth, no maternal tenderness. They sounded like someone fine-tuning a plan that did not include the survival of the child. Amelia pressed herself against the wall and leaned toward the narrow gap in the door. The blue nightlight washed over Evelyn's face, turning it into an emotionless mask. No hesitation, no remorse. She stood beside the crib, hand resting on the rail as though guarding a project that was nearly complete. Leo lay beneath her, face flushed crimson, lips dry, his tiny body trembling under the fever. Weak whimpers escaped him, mixing with the storm outside, creating a sound that made Amelia's chest tighten painfully. Sophie stood by the window, hands wrung together, eyes wide with panic. When she noticed Amelia in the hall, she nearly broke down, but bit her lip to silence the sob. I "I don't know what to do anymore," Sophie whispered, voice trembling. "He's burning up, and he's breathing so fast." Evelyn turned her head sharply, eyes slicing through Sophie, then Amelia. There was no surprise in her expression at being caught hovering over a feverish child in the middle of the night. Only annoyance, buried beneath a scary, practiced calm. "Is there a problem?" Evelyn asked, her voice almost gentle, but carrying something cold enough to make Sophie step back. "He needs a doctor," Amelia said steadily. "Leo has a high fever." Evelyn narrowed her eyes and stepped closer. The space between them shrank until Amelia could feel the warmth of her breath. Then Evelyn leaned in, whispering softly, her words cutting through the storm. "People who ask too many questions don't last long in this house." The threat fell icy and deliberate. Amelia didn't step back. She didn't blink. But inside her, something ignited. Not fear, but something stronger. Resolve. Evelyn left the room as if nothing had happened, leaving Amelia and Sophie behind in suffocating silence. Outside, the rain struck harder, as though pushing Amelia toward a choice. And she knew. This night was the turning point. If she didn't act soon, Leo wouldn't survive much longer. Later that same night, the night rain hammered against Lancaster Estate with a fury that felt almost deliberate, as if the sky itself had decided it was time for something buried to be forced into the open. Wind slapped the windows, making a metallic clatter that echoed through the hallways, and the heavy air inside the house thickened until Amelia felt it pressing against her skin. She moved toward Leo's room as though walking deeper into a place where shadows breathed. Sophie was already there, standing rigid beside the crib, pale under the wash of blue light from the night lamp. The moment she saw Amelia in the doorway, her voice cracked in a trembling whisper. "Amelia? I'm scared." Amelia didn't need to ask why. One glance at Leo was enough to freeze her in place. The baby lay disturbingly still, face burning with fever, lips darkened, breath faint and irregular. His tiny chest barely lifted, the rise and fall so subtle, Amelia had to stare to be sure he was breathing at all. When she touched his forehead, the blazing heat made her jerk back. "Oh, God, he's burning up." Panic rose in her chest, raw and immediate. Sophie sobbed harder, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "I don't know what to do anymore. He keeps getting weaker. I'm terrified." Then Amelia noticed the bottle sitting near the crib. Under the blue light, the leftover milk clung to the sides in thick streaks. At the bottom, a pale residue clouded the glass. The sight made her stomach twist. She had just reached for it when the door swung open behind her. Evelyn appeared, her face carved sharp by the blue glow. Her eyes narrowed the moment she saw where Amelia was looking. "Why are you examining my things?" Her voice was calm, but the coldness beneath it sliced like metal. "Leo has a fever. The milk looks wrong. He needs a doctor," Amelia said. "That's enough." Evelyn stepped forward, her heels striking the floor with clipped force. "You want to blame me now? If anything happens to Leo, it's because you two can't do your jobs." Sophie crumpled into sobs. "No, I didn't. I swear I didn't." Evelyn spun toward her, pointing sharply. "Shut up. If you caused this, if you made him sicker, I will make sure no hospital hires you again." Amelia stepped in between them. "No one harmed Leo, but if he doesn't get help, he won't survive tonight." "No one is calling for help," Evelyn said slowly, every word a threat. "Nathaniel is on his way home. I want everything quiet until he arrives. I'll handle it." There was nothing in her expression resembling concern. Then she grabbed Leo from the crib, the baby's limp body folded into her arms, head slumping sideways. Evelyn turned away with the casualness of someone carrying something broken, not a dying child. That was the moment Amelia's fear hardened into resolve. "Sophie," she whispered, "stand in her line of sight, just for a second." Sophie, trembling and tear-stricken, nodded and stepped forward, drawing Evelyn's attention. Just enough. Amelia slipped a hand into her pocket, pulled out her small phone, and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Amelia whispered, softer than the rain outside. Infant, severe respiratory distress, suspected poisoning, Lancaster Estate. Send an ambulance now. She ended the call instantly. The minutes that followed stretched unbearably long. Amelia heard nothing but the rain and Leo's fading breaths. Evelyn paced, unaware. Sophie trembled beside the crib, eyes red and wide. Then the sirens cut through the storm. Evelyn froze. What? Who? She didn't finish. EMTs rushed inside. The moment they saw Leo, glassy-eyed, blue-lipped, barely responsive, their reactions snapped sharp. Severe respiratory failure, one called out. Possible toxic exposure. Oxygen now. Evelyn flipped her emotions like a switch. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she burst into frantic wails. My baby! They hurt him. They were the last ones with him. She pointed at Amelia and Sophie, hands shaking, eyes cold behind the curtain of tears. Sophie collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Amelia didn't flinch. She had no fear left, only certainty. The truth was being carried out to the ambulance, beyond Evelyn's control. And from that moment on, nothing could stop it. The real storm had begun. The ambulance siren still echoed in Amelia's ears as she stood in the hospital hallway, the cold scent of disinfectant cutting into every breath. Rain clung to her jacket, dripping onto the floor in dark streaks, like remnants of a nightmare still unfolding. Leo had been rushed into the emergency room the moment they arrived, swallowed by gloved hands and urgent voices. Barely a minute later, the hospital entrance slammed open. Nathaniel stormed in, soaked, breathless, face drained of all color. He didn't remove his coat or greet anyone. He only asked one question, his voice strangled. Where is my son? No one answered immediately, not from hesitation, but because none of them knew whether the truth would destroy him. A doctor stepped forward, his expression heavy and deliberate. Mr. Lancaster, your son is in critical condition. He's suffering from severe poisoning. Not from today. The levels suggest this has been happening for weeks. The words hit like a blade. Nathaniel froze, lips parting but soundless. Evelyn lunged forward, crying out with a pitch that bordered on hysteria. No, that's impossible. It's them, those people. They hurt him, those employees. She pointed at Amelia and Sophie, tears streaming, but her eyes sharp, calculating. The doctor shut that performance down with a single steely look. He raised a small glass vial between two fingers, still dusted with white residue. We found this under the crib, he said, and traces of the same substance were in the bottle. This was no accident. Evelyn stopped crying instantly. The silence that followed exposed the emptiness of her tears. Mr. Harris, the family driver of over 20 years, stepped forward. His hands were trembling. I saw the madam preparing bottles alone several times, he said. And once I heard glass clinking. There was a strange smell. I thought I was mistaken, so I didn't speak up. Nathaniel stared at him, shock and betrayal twisting together. Then Sophie wiped her swollen eyes and forced herself to speak. I saw it too. Leo always got worse after she fed him. I wanted to tell someone, but she threatened to fire me. You're lying, Evelyn screamed, but her voice cracked, fear bleeding into every word. Amelia stepped forward. She reached inside her coat and pulled out a tightly wrapped folder containing photos of the empty vials, notes of feeding times, symptoms, a video showing Evelyn locking the room before preparing a bottle. These, Amelia said calmly, are everything I documented over the last 3 days. If I hadn't done it, Leo wouldn't be alive right now. Nathaniel took the folder. His hand shook as he flipped each page. Then he lifted his head and looked at his wife. The man who once trusted Evelyn without question now stared with nothing but devastation. "Evelyn," he said, voice tearing, "what did you do to our son?" The question shattered the hallway. Evelyn stepped back, then back again, until her shoulders hit the wall. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. There was nowhere left to run from the truth. So she ran physically instead. She bolted toward the entrance, desperate, wild, as if escape could rewrite reality. But hospital security had already positioned themselves the moment the doctor revealed the vial. They caught her easily. She screamed, the sound breaking apart in the sterile air. "I didn't do it! I didn't!" But no one believed her anymore. Amelia watched the struggle, the chaos, the rain thrashing against the glass doors. And for the first time in days, she felt something shift. The nightmare wasn't over yet. But the truth had finally found its voice. The echo of Evelyn's final scream still lingered in the hospital corridor long after the metal door slammed behind her. The harsh, hollow sound felt like the last ripple of a storm that Lancaster Estate had endured far too long. Amelia stood there for a few seconds, letting the quiet settle around her. The moment security held Evelyn back, she knew the darkest part of the nightmare had ended. But outside, another storm was waiting. It took less than an hour for reporters to swarm the hospital entrance like a rising tide. Camera flashes burst against the glass doors. The noisy tangle of questions, footsteps, and speculation seeped into the hallway where Amelia stood. Headlines exploded across every phone screen. Infant poisoning scandal shakes elite family. Evelyn Lancaster, devoted mother or hidden villain? Horrifying truth behind the glamorous mansion. Evelyn had once crafted herself into the picture of perfection. Gentle, resilient, self-sacrificing. Now every post she'd ever made was being dissected, torn apart, compared with the evidence pouring out. Public fury burned hot. Social feeds roared, and for once, pretense had nowhere left to hide. Police formally opened the investigation that same night. They escorted Evelyn into an interrogation room, and the sounds, raw, angry, stripped of performance, echoed like a belated confession. Amelia didn't watch her go. She turned away. Evelyn no longer mattered. Leo did. Several hours later, after the police finished their preliminary statements, they allowed Nathaniel into the interrogation room. The harsh overhead light cast Evelyn in a way he had never seen before. No makeup, no filters, no angles to help her. Just the truth. He stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. "Why?" he asked, voice raw. "What did Leo ever do to you?" Evelyn looked up, eyes dull rather than remorseful. "Do you think this is about him?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "You drugged our son." She gave a brittle laugh. "Our son? All you ever cared about was how he looked on camera, how he smiled, how perfect he made your image. But when he cried, when he screamed, do you know who they blamed? Me. The perfect wife, the perfect mother. The internet doesn't forgive imperfection." She leaned forward, cuffs clinking. "So I made him perfect, quiet, soft, manageable?" Nathaniel recoiled as if struck. "You almost killed him." Evelyn's expression flickered, just once. "You wouldn't understand. You never had millions watching your every breath." Nathaniel swallowed the burn in his throat. "I would have given up everything," he said softly, "for my son." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream, and when Nathaniel walked out, he didn't slam the door. He simply closed it, as if burying the last illusion he ever had of her. Morning brought the first real light. Leo had crossed the critical threshold. Doctors said he was improving, slow, careful progress, but progress nonetheless. When they spoke the words, Nathaniel nearly collapsed. He covered his face, then suddenly pulled Amelia into an embrace. "If it weren't for you," he said, his voice breaking, "I would have lost my son." Amelia shook her head. "I only did what anyone in my place should have done." "No," Nathaniel answered, "not everyone would have had the courage." He paused, gathering himself before he spoke again. "I want you to stay with Leo. Stay in that house, but not as someone overlooked. I want to appoint you as the senior internal manager. And if you ever wish to return to laboratory work, I'll help restore everything that was taken from you." Amelia didn't respond at once. His words sank into her slowly, like sunlight breaking through after long rain. Inside the recovery room, Leo lay in a small hospital crib, eyes drowsy yet brighter than the night before. He looked around as if sensing the shift in the world. When Amelia stepped closer, Leo lifted his tiny hand, searching. She reached out, and his small fingers curled around hers in a silent thank you. In the corner, Sophie watched, eyes swollen but smiling softly for the first time in days. Nathaniel turned toward her and rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sophie, thank you for protecting my son. I want you to stay, with fair pay and complete security. You won't have to fear anyone again." Sophie burst into tears, but they were tears of relief, of release. And in that bright white room, Amelia felt something blooming in her chest, a pulse of new life, like the first breath after nearly drowning. The tragedy had surfaced, the darkness had cracked open, and a new beginning was unfolding. For Leo, for Amelia, for Sophie, and for a home once suffocated by secrets.